everybody, this is Mike. I got another recipe for you. This is one I like to take to work. I think I'm going to create a whole series of recipes that are easy to freeze and microwave if you work in an office environment like I do. This one is 15 bean and ham soup, and I make it in a pressure cooker. And right now it's one of my absolute favorite recipes. The flavor is very intense, and all the ingredients that go inside are stuff that I really like. So if you need a good workplace recipe, I hope you give this one a try, because I really enjoy this one. Got all my ingredients laid out, my mise en place as it were, and let's get going. Okay everybody, this is my 15 bean and ham soup. Let's get started. Right here what I have is 2 tablespoons of coconut oil and 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And in the recipe it calls for 2 tablespoons of clarified butter and 1 tablespoon of olive oil. But I'm trying out a new oil, real heavy into the non-GMO food right now. And I think coconut oil is a good substitute for other types of vegetable oil. So that's one of the few changes that I'm going to make on this recipe tonight, but I'll post the ingredients for the main recipe without changes on my website and on YouTube right below the video. So I'm going to go ahead and put that oil in there. And this is the fat in which we're going to saute our onion. Okay, so we've got our oil in the pressure cooker, and I'm going to dump in 1 whole yellow onion diced. We're going to saute that up. And what I like to do is saute the onion first, because I'm not a real big fan of raw onions, and if you watch a lot of my videos, you'll find that out. I very rarely cook with raw onions. And incidentally, if you're using an 8-quart pressure cooker like I am, it really helps to have a long spoon like this, because you can make this a one-pot dish. I'm gonna include all of the ingredients in this recipe in this single pot before I snap the lid on and get it under pressure. But this is a great time saver, and it saves on the dishes as well. So I'm going to get these onions sauteed up, and then we'll pick back up on the video at that point. Okay. Okay, so we're getting a pretty good saute on our onions. And the next ingredient that I like to put in is the cubed ham. So right here I've got 16 ounces of cubed ham. And I get this out of the meat department. It's usually in the fresh case. Pre-cubed, I do this just because it's easier. Sometimes I get ham steak. It just depends on what kind of mood I'm in, to be quite frank with you. And here lately, I appreciate the convenience of having cubed ham. So I'm going to get that in there, and we're going to saute that up. Okay, so we got our onions and our ham sauteing, and the onions are getting quite soft. That's the way I like it. We're getting a good warm up on the ham, and now we're going to add in our vegetables, which are 3 or 4 cut up carrots, which I also peel, 3 or 4 parsnips, and this is the new part to the recipe. I'm trying this out on this recipe today, because I've always wanted to see what kind of flavor this adds to the recipe, and I'm hoping it'll add a little bit more of a meaty flavor to this recipe. So I'm adding about 3 or 4 cut up parsnips, and then I'm adding about 4 or 5 ribs of celery cut up a little bit smaller than I do the carrots and the parsnips, because when I'm eating soup I don't like to get a big piece of celery, and that's just personal preference. So there's lots of moisture in here from the vegetables, and we got our 2 tablespoons of coconut oil and olive oil, and so I'm going to let this cook down just a bit, and then we'll come back on the video when all this gets cooked through. Okay, so we've got our vegetables and onion and ham. They've been cooking down just a little bit here. Can't say how long. I kind of look at it. It's usually 3 to 4 minutes. It depends on the temperature of the stovetop. I've got my stovetop as high as it'll go right now. You can probably see the glow from the burners. I do that so that the time it takes for my pressure cooker to create steam is a lot shorter. And I like the caramelization you get from the onions and the vegetables and the whatnot. So let's move on to our next ingredient, which is going to be 3 cloves of chopped garlic. And I get the garlic that's in the jar pre-minced, and I only buy the one that's in olive oil. Everything that I've read and heard says that this is just like regular clove garlic, as long as you get it in olive oil. Hard to find, but I find it, and I like it, and I can't tell the difference, and it's a huge convenience factor for me. So that's the equivalent of 3 cloves of garlic. The next ingredient that I have here is Dijon mustard, and this is going to be about 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. Okay, so we got our Dijon mustard in there. Now we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. That goes right in there like that. And now we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of chili powder. I just get the regular old chili powder that's in the grocery store. I don't mind too much the different exotic flavors from Texas and New Mexico and whatnot. In this particular dish with the pressure cooker, it's more for heat and flavor than anything else. So just regular old chili powder should do. Next ingredient is going to be the next ingredient's going to be 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, and I'm going to make a change on the recipe this time. In addition to the 1 tablespoon of dried parsley I have, I'm putting in about the 10 sprigs of thyme, just the leaf part. I want to see if that adds any flavor to this recipe, but it's not on the main ingredient list, but I want to try it this time and see how that goes. So I'm adding in about 10 sprigs of thyme along with the dried parsley. And this is starting to smell unbelievable right now. Alright, so the next thing we want to put in is 10 cups of low sodium chicken broth. And I've got a mixture of chicken broth and beef broth here in this container, and I have found that it doesn't make that much of a difference. So I use whatever's on hand, as my liquid. I never use water. The beef broth and the chicken broth add a lot of flavor, so that's what I use, and I always will use it. So right now this is starting to look a lot like a minestrone soup or a really loose beef stew, something along those lines, but we have a couple more ingredients coming. Next ingredient is going to be the juice of 1 lemon. And that's 1 fresh lemon right there. I never buy that lemon that's in the container on the dry foods aisle. In fact, I rarely shop on the dry foods aisle, to be honest with you. But fresh lemon, there's no comparison to that. Alright, so the next ingredient I'm going to add is the star of the show, obviously, the 15 bean soup. And if you live in the South, you've probably seen this before. It's ham beans, 15 bean soup. And I've tried the soup going by the directions on this package, and I thought it lacked a lot of flavor. And that's what kind of started this adventure for me on this recipe, was trying to add as much flavor to this recipe as I could. And I think I've got it figured out, and I just love it. So this is 1 bag. It's 20 ounces of 15 bean soup package, and inside this bag there is a packet of quote-unquote ham flavor. In the trash, garbage, not going to use it, never have, never will. I have no idea what's in there. Could be a lot of salt, could be something really gross, so I'm not using it. It's going in the garbage. But there you have it. I washed this in a colander and then put that right in. Okay, so I got my 15 bean soup rinsed, and I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. You can kind of see all the different beans that come in the package. I read the package one time. Half of them I'd never heard of, but I assure you this assortment of beans makes this recipe very, very good. Okay, in addition to the 15 bean soup, I'm also going to add 1 cup of black-eyed peas. This isn't on the regular recipe. Like I said, I'm trying to change things up a little this time. I want to try some things out, and this is one of the additions I want to make. With the amount of ingredients and liquid that I have, I think I'm lacking a little bit of bean, and I love black-eyed peas, so I'm gonna add these to this recipe. Okay, so I got my black-eyed peas all rinsed off. I'm gonna pour in to the pot here. Okay, give that just a little bit of a stir. On pressure cookers, you have to be very careful not to take it all the way to the top edge of the pot. You need room for the liquid to create steam. And there's a line in there somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is right now, but I've made this recipe so many times, I pretty much know where I'm going to end up, and it's worked out fine every time. But if you take your liquid to about this level, it's never going to create enough steam, and you might have some problems. So always remember, if you're using a pressure cooker, to keep it 2-3 inches on an 8-quart. I use an 8-quart. Most people get a 6-quart, but I like the bigger size for recipes like I'm doing today. Okay, so the final ingredient that I have are smoked ham hocks, and in my opinion, this makes or breaks the recipe. I get these from Publix. I live in Central Florida, so that's kind of the grocery store of choice. They always have these in stock. This is basically pieces of the leg on a pig that have been smoked, and it's an awesome flavor enhancer for anything southern. In this little cheesecloth bundle, I have 3 bay leaves, and I also have a few ham hock bone pieces that I didn't want floating around in the soup. I wanted to be able to pull those out. So normally I just throw the bay leaves in the soup, but this time, because I had those small bones that I want to be able to retrieve, I threw my bay leaves in there as well to make that easy to get back. So I'm going to throw my ham hocks in there, my smoked ham hocks, and the ingredients are complete. This is ready to go under pressure. And let's bring this up to a slight boil, and then we'll add the lid. So one other ingredient that I want to add before I put the lid on is fresh cracked black pepper. And the recipe calls for, I think, a teaspoon, but it's to taste, and I love pepper, so I give it a pretty good grind right in there before I add the lid. I'm going to stir that around a bit, and this is just looking awesome. Holy cow. Look at that. I just love this recipe. Okay, so we're ready to put the lid on the pressure cooker, and incidentally, I wanted to mention salt. Some of you foodie people that do a lot of recipes, I'm sure you've noticed I haven't added any salt to this recipe, and there's a very specific reason why I don't do that. Salt affects the beans in a really bad way. And what it does is it makes the outside of the beans very mealy when it's under pressure. So if you want to add salt, you want to add salt after the recipe is done. But I gotta be honest with you, I very rarely add salt because of all the other flavors that are going on in here. I don't think you're gonna miss it much. Some people may. I'm very averse to salt, so I try not to add it too much to a lot of recipes, but that's why you didn't see me add any salt. Okay, so we're gonna add the lid to our pressure cooker, and my pressure cooker is one where the little jiggler thing is right there. And sometimes this thing can be kind of a pain to get on. I gotta find the arrow right there and line that up. If it's not lined up just right, it won't turn. Okay, it's turning just fine now. And I've got this set to pressure, which is right there. And if you wanted to release it immediately, which we're not going to do in this recipe, you would just simply turn it to that side when you're done cooking to release all the pressure. But for this recipe, we're going to leave it there until the safety gasket drops. Right now it's sunk in, so I can turn the lid on and off. But when it builds up enough pressure, there's going to be a little steel rod that pops up that'll prevent me from taking the lid off. So we're just going to wait for it to come up to pressure, and we'll pick up the video from there. Okay, so I wanted to pick the video back up at this point because just now the gasket pin has popped up and there's a little bit of steam coming out through that port. And I cannot remove this lid now. So it is getting close to pressure. And by the way, the maximum amount of pressure that this pressure cooker will produce is 15 pounds per square inch. And unlike the old days, these new pressure cookers have a little safety valve, which is right there. It's a little rubber stopper, I guess is the best way to explain it, that's sticking in a hole in the stainless steel part, and if it creates too much pressure, that little grommet will pop off and release all the pressure. So the days of the exploding pressure cookers are over. You know, I'm sure your grandmother, my grandmother certainly knew of somebody or had a story of somebody that had a pressure cooker that exploded. But these days, the way they make them, that just doesn't happen with that with that safety valve. And the way the lid ratchets on, it can't possibly explode, in my opinion. You do want to make sure that the little nipple part stays clean and free, because here in a little while we're going to start seeing steam come up out of here, and that's how we'll know to turn down the temperature on the stove. Meanwhile, I still have this heating element on high. It's maximum. It can't go any higher, and I'm doing that so I can achieve the steam. And when it starts steaming, we'll pick the video back up. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit of steam coming out of the pressure cooker. It comes out of this little regulating valve right here. And at this point, this is where we want to turn down the stovetop. And I've got it on high right now. And on my particular stovetop, I take it to 5, and that will keep enough steam to hold the pressure inside this pressure cooker for 35 minutes. So now that the pressure cooker has come up to steam, I'm going to set a timer for 35 minutes. Right there, 35 minutes. We're going to start it, and then we're just going to let this go for that amount of time, and then we'll pick the video back up at that point. Okay, everybody, we're getting close to the 35-minute mark. I'm showing 3 seconds. We still got pressure. What we're going to do is shut the stove off, and we're going to take this off the heat, and we're just going to let it sit there. And on this particular recipe, what happens is you let it release pressure on its own. On a lot of recipes with a pressure cooker, you release the pressure immediately at a certain time. On this particular pressure cooker, it would be turning the dial to here, and steam would just rush out of there. It's almost a violent action of steam coming out of this pressure cooker. But in this particular recipe, you just let it lose its pressure on its own. I don't know if you can see this on video, but the regulator, the little pin here that prevents me from taking the lid off, is still up. And when that goes down, I can take the lid off, and we'll pick the video back up from there. Okay, gang, the safety valve has fallen, which means that I should be able to open the lid. I'm going to check the regulator, and sure enough, there is no more pressure in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off, and let's take a look. Alright, so there's my 15 bean soup. There's the cheesecloth, which I'm going to get out of there. Yikes, that is hot. So let's get that cheesecloth of the little bones on the smoked ham hock and the bay leaves. Let's get the regular ham hocks. I don't know if you can see that on video, but that thing has just completely fallen apart right there. Yikes, that is hot. Should be another one. There it is. And again, that one is just completely fallen apart. All the goodness from that ham hock has gone into my soup, and that's what we wanted. We're going to discard that. That's given up all the flavor it's going to give up, and what's left is this beautiful bean soup that's flavored with ham and ham hock and various other ingredients. But so there you have it, Mike's 15 bean and ham soup.